All right, y'all. It is a shoulder and tricep workout, garage gym style. So, hope you guys enjoy these, and let's get after it. So, showed a little bit different of an activation and a prep. Nothing magical. Just wanted to kind of mess around with my blocks, just for kind of controlling my upper arm position and just seeing how it felt to do some stuff prone. So just doing some scapula motion. I realize this is probably not the best angle, but trying to keep my GH joint relatively still and just how much can I move my scapula, basically minus protraction. So obviously there's a little bit of an elevation, there's a retraction, there's a depression component, and kind of keeping it in the middle. So I'm doing pretty much 5 of each of these for the activation. So I start with scap circles, then I go isolated internal, external rotation, obviously only really kind of pushing the range that I have at the external, not really challenging internal a whole lot, so I get that a little bit when I finish up. So again, I'm keeping most of these just nice, smooth, quality contraction, not really thinking about overly slow or controlled, just getting, again, some good contractions and ownership in the end range. So this one is the kind of like a trap 3 variation, but basically just isolated retraction within a pretty externally rotated position of the GH joint there. And again, really kind of squeezing through kind of mid, lower, upper traps, a little bit of everything. And then essentially going through a pressing motion. And the goal of this is basically everything that kind of abducts your upper arm away from your midline and is an external rotation is just really driving all of that up towards the ceiling. So that's just getting a really nasty contraction, nothing to really do with a delt. And then just doing some circles. So you see I'm getting a little bit more of a component of internal rotation there, just keeping the upper arm up. So just taking it through some flexion, extension, and again with a component of kind of internal rotation, a little bit of external rotation to finish. I honestly really like this sequence. It got me prepped and ready to go. So I'll probably keep this in some capacity again. And again, sometimes I just like some prone stuff because I got the wiggles. So I think maybe I move around a little bit more sometimes on my prep than I want to. And then from there, I incorporate a little bit more spine motion, get those shoulder blades protracting a little bit. I really like taking my spine through a lot of, flexion, a lot of extension, and again, get my, at the same time, scapula moving about as much as they can through retraction and protraction, and incorporating some internal and external rotation for that GH joint. So I think this is a really nice one to kind of finish on, because, for lack of a better word, it ties it all together. And then the last thing I did after that was this little kind of, barbell complex. I'll say complex for lack of a better word, and that just sounds cooler. But I don't know if you guys have seen me do this before. If you can't do this with just your hands, don't have a bar force you behind your back. If you can't do it with a broomstick, don't do it with 45 pounds. But I'm taking it basically through some, rotation there at the scapula. So just through kind of a controlled, protraction, elevation, retraction, and then I'm just doing some reps essentially kind of back and forth behind the neck, and I always like to hit my scap moving down there a little bit. So while I'm staying in that position, keeping the GH joint relatively still, just elevating, depressing those shoulders. Again, a little back and forward. Again, I can do this pretty comfortably, nothing really killer going on with me having to be a little bit of cervical flexion. And same thing, some shrugs in that bottom position and some presses there. And like I said before, I've never really quite done the sequence, but again, obviously doing some reps here with the barbell in my hand. And to be honest, I haven't felt like I needed this little warm-up, which again is always the goal as far as how many reps do I have to do in my warm-up sets, in a long time. So I skipped a couple sets, not going to show you a bunch, but I honestly think I started with maybe 95 pounds and, did that for maybe 5, didn't feel like I needed to do any more. Then I went to 135, did that for maybe 3 or 4, and I'm just like, man, I feel ready to go. So basically just touching some weights on the way up to my top set. So maybe did 2 with that, which I think might be like 185-ish, and then I think I'll go to 205. So again, if you're looking at this bench as well too, it's probably at about a 75-degree incline. So again, that's just there's a lot of people that will be like, oh, because I don't care if it's called an overhead press or whatever the hell you want to call it. I just want my upper arm to move through a pretty big path, so I like to have an arch, tuck my elbow in just a little bit, and believe me, I wish it was more upper chest. But then again, this is a pretty good angle, just really for being comfortable at the shoulder joint, not having to be fully kind of like horizontally, again, abducted and smashing up that joint. So it's a little bit more of a comfortable position. And honestly, taking me a little bit, don't realize how much I'm used to using the mirror and just kind of getting everything comfortable and locked in position. So for this weight, I was decently happy to go up to 4 reps. I really would like 5, but again, I've been kind of out of sorts the last couple of days, not eating a whole lot, same shit as everybody else. And again, just so getting back in the groove and obviously training in a different gym, my home gym, which I really built for my wife, and luckily I have some decent weights there for. So you guys will see that was my top set. Again, always shooting, would have liked that 5, and would have probably normally comfortably got it, but not too bad for 4 reps. And then for today's workout, one for the reason of kind of pace, But also, again, just didn't want a ton of volume, again, because I'm not been quite on the normal schedule, and not even really for the volume, but basically just a couple not great nights of sleep, and not eating a whole lot of food. So, the recovery is just not necessarily 100% there. Just saying all that out loud, I don't give a shit if I have a not the best gym performance. So again, I would kind of call those maybe rest pause drop sets, which I kind of like, because I would say I'd be getting more effective reps. I'd gone right into it. Maybe I get 3 reps, and then if I go, with a little bit of rest, maybe I got 5 reps. I don't remember what I got here, so just using that as an example. So again, sometimes the drop set, take your time, get yourself in a solid position. And I was overall pretty good with this press. There are a couple reps you can see I just get a little uneven, just kind of, again, finding my groove. And to the extent I don't mind it, obviously, for bodybuilding, but I'm a little bit used to the mirror. But anyway, so just look for, if you're going to do a press, overhead press, for most people, I would much rather have you guys do something like that, kind of a high incline, as opposed to trying to be at a 90-degree angle. Really no purpose of it. This position, your shoulders can move much better. And then a little trick, if you look on the bench there, again, it's about 75 degrees or 70 degrees, whatever. I got that seat up too, so use that to kind of press yourself back into the pad, kind of lock your upper body in stone a little bit more still. And then the other things you'll see is once I'm in there, my legs are locked out wide, my hips are locked in stone. I really focus a lot on bracing my midsection on these. I feel like I really need to. I honestly feel like in the past, I was underperforming on this exercise compared to the rest of my lifts. And I think I was neglecting how much more stable I feel. And once I feel stable, arguably through my torso, and then in turn, obviously, through my scapula, because my scapula, resides over that torso. That's really its only attachment. I'm doing attachment in quotes since it's not even like a normal attachment. But anyway, so the better I would lock my ribs in place, the better I feel like my scapula would be kind of in a more stable position, even though it's moving. But again, it would allow me for a little bit more output. So anyway, that's a neglected thing on this one. You guys are doing overhead press. Don't neglect bracing your midsection. So taking a nice breath through the nose, feel your belly pull out, and then brace your muscles hard against that pull out. And the only other thing is look at my grip. Just make sure that your hand is roughly above your elbow, kind of where near that midpoint. Obviously, it's going to move a little bit because it's on an arc, and your hands are not. But so just take a grip, excuse me. That's, again, always going to keep that hand stacked below your shoulder and getting you through good range of motion. So now into lateral raises. As you guys know, I'm not a big fan of the profile for lateral raises for dumbbells because they just kind of are only hard in one spot. So this is a great at-home option when you don't have cables or a good machine. So I'm taking a moderately lighter weight. I'm on an incline that's probably about an 80-degree incline, which puts me in a perfect position, for getting my front delt on top of side delt on top of the joint. Also helps me keep my body locked in stone so there's no cheating. So I did maybe whatever I have written there. I think I did 8 to 10, just basically focusing on the top half, really kind of overdoing control. And then I'm grabbing a heavier dumbbell and I'm doing essentially partials in that bottom range of motion. So basically, that's the whole point. Why do cables, and why don't I just do this instead of cables? Well, cables take half the time, and there's not just training one part. I think there's something actually to training through a full range of motion if you can with a good load. Excuse me. So that really is just kind of basically, it's a waste of time. And this last little extension of the band finisher was actually pretty nice. If you grab it, this actually, even though the band stretches and gets heavier, as it gets closer to your shoulder joint, it essentially gets lighter. So it's surprisingly a decent little exercise. So basically taking the mid-ranges that I absolutely, just whatever I have left, and then pulling that band even tight so I can even get that bottom range when basically everything else is fatigued. And so again, for not having a single great profile for one of the exercises, all these really, really work together really well for training your delts through near their full contractile range, from shortened to lengthened. As you can see, I was happy about that. It felt really good. So again, really great sequence there. Again, if you don't have access to what I prefer for side delts. And then same kind of thing going here for rear delts. So see, I'm attempting to stay in the top half. Get that rear delt on top of the joint, meaning it should point straight up towards the ceiling when you're using gravity. So for me, it's a little bit of internal rotation. I like to feel like I'm leading the motion with my hands and my elbows. And notice my shoulder blades, I'm not thinking about them at all, and neither should you. Just have a feeling of tight. And again, if they move a little bit, they should move a little bit. If, again, it's the only thing happening is a shrug or a retraction in this case, then that's not good. But just let them move comfortably. Focus on that upper arm driving out and wide and squeeze that rear delt. Same principle going to a heavier dumbbell here. and extending it with some partial reps, and then going into a band. And again, this was actually pretty damn nice and surprisingly hard. Actually, get kind of cool there, where I kind of wanted to find a stopping point. So again, if I pulled the band all the way against my chest, it would actually be to the point where there's little to no tension. So by doing this on the bench, as soon as that band catches the bench and my hands keep going back, it keeps that load from dropping off too much, so it's a near zero. So train that range that I've got there, and then as soon as I can't do more, get a little bit tighter and do some partials. And then the very last thing is so I can get even some tension just at the very beginning, very lengthened range of my rear delt, hitting some band partials again. So nice, neat and tidy little drop there. And that should really trash your rear delts again when you don't have access to a thing with a better profile. And this was my finisher. So just kind of a variation of the shotgun to the dick superset. And again, for those that don't know, that's what this feels like for your shoulders, or at least I imagine. So grabbing a band, getting an anchor. I'm started kind of lean forward, so when I'm in that peak of the external rotation, the goal is to have the band about 90 degrees to my shoulder, so I'm really training that position is the point of the exercise. So you see that's why I lean forward. If I stood up, it would actually get a little bit lighter at the top. So lean forward a little bit my hips, and again, just kind of a face pull, external rotation, retraction-y, abduction-y type thing. And again, trying to keep my body still, so kneeling helps me on that, and just also makes it easier. Instead of having to have a fixed point somewhere up higher that doesn't move on a power rack, just put it underneath something. And then going into essentially an upright row, I just like to finish my upright rows with a little bit of external rotation. Tends to be a little bit more comfortable position on my shoulder joint. When again, upright rows are not the best movement on the planet. Again, done with some independent handles like this, not too bad. So again, moving from something that's really taxing purely external rotation, a little bit of horizontal abduction. This one moves a little bit more to abduction, but I'm keeping some external rotation in there. And then basically a front raise variation. And I'm not counting. Maybe I tapped out like a bitch on this one. I was trying to do 10 to 15 on each. So even when that weight was a little heavy sitting it down, made it a teeny bit lighter. I kind of pulled away from the band as well too, so kind of almost offset the drop. And then for those that don't know, this looks stupid. You're like, that looks stupid. That doesn't make any sense. That's why it's called the stupid press. And so that's why we're doing it here, because, again, it's stupid of how painful it is. And, again, mechanically, it's not really a mystery. Obviously, I know which way the load is pulling, but your front delta is entirely on load. So you're basically pulsing it back and forth, to high torque to lower torque, high torque to lower torque. So, again, it's just kind of an interesting way, I think, to maintain something that's kind of almost like an isometric contraction relative to where the load is. But anyway, so try it out. You'll understand why it's horrible. And then finishing with lateral raises, so kneeling up tall and just taking these obviously as wide as I can, always thinking hands out and not up. And then from there, obviously, just cranking it into partials. I tighten the band up just to make sure there's not zero tension and just have a seizure until I am done. That is delts, and here is a quick but very efficient tricep workout that's going to train them through their full contractile range, not needing any other equipment than dumbbells and bands. So that's pretty damn nice. So again, honestly, the skull crusher or tricep extension, whatever, is a great exercise. Again, as far as it has a very solid profile, so it loads the muscle the way that the tricep should be loaded. Again, from heaviest in those length and mid ranges to dropping off a little bit. The only problem here is alignment. And again, this exercise really doesn't fit me. I can't keep my elbows pointed straight up. So if your upper arms point out at all, eventually I don't think it'll be the best fit for your elbow. But again, not like they're going to explode overnight. For me, it's the best option now. And you will see as well, too, I'm just trying to keep that upper arm locked in stone, elbows nice and still, pulled in as tight as you can. Take the dumbbells for as much range of motion as they have. I see people stopping short all the time. Bring them all the way down to the bench. Obviously, just don't take tension off. And you'll see I'm staying well short of lockout, so I'm keeping all the tension through that triceps pretty much lengthened and mid-range. And now I'm going to overload the shit out of the shortened range. So obviously you make this as heavy as you want, really just training for that end full extension. So don't worry really what the load is in the middle. Think we already trained that range with a better exercise, so we'll take this one to complete extension. These are horrible at this point in time, trust me. Try and always hit that second lockout, and this is when you get to have the seizure reps. So step overhead. Now arguably we're lengthening the long head of the tricep a little bit, and then just blasting what's left again in that mid, favoring the lengthened range now. And again, it's just a sequence that seems to work really good. You can make the argument at training the muscle through its full contractile range with one superset. Great, efficient, because that seems to be important for growing muscle still. And through all of them, we can actually match what the muscle can do in those given lengths. So again, as far as efficient work for tricep goes, this is about as good as you get. And so again, you'll see that was my last set around of this superset. But again, I'm just doing a little drop set to extend it on the end there as well. But if you think, obviously, if you're doing this same as anything else, you're progressing your loads, that just in and of itself can get you some big-ass triceps if you do it right. Like I said, you do 30s with great form now. Trust me, if you're doing 50s with great form, your triceps are going to get bigger. And then obviously trashing whatever you got left with the bands. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. The latest installment for all of those you with home gyms. I hope these help in the time when you're probably occupying them more than normal.